and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week comes from the Ronin console. It is Millennial Mike. Welcome back, Millennial Mike.
Good to see you. Good to hear you. Cannot wait to get in this episode today. Finally got settled in, and my microphone's working, my computer's working. It's nothing started on fire. More than I could say for the Warner Brothers lot, but
yeah, that's right. You're coming from your all-new studio, and we will cover that for sure in the Brocat block. But if this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Brocat block, which is the more personal side of the show, what Millennial Mike and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 572. So this one for sure drove down some prices in the world of Magic the Gathering, as the unique One Ring Magic the Gathering card has finally been discovered and PSA graded as a 9.0. So this is the only one of its kind. It is a one of one, and it has attracted offers of over $2 million from collectors, potentially becoming the most expensive Magic card ever. Its findings may affect the value of collector booster packs, which is where this card was found, or where it was originally available. I know Bobby, who works at a card shop, has said that it's already affected the pricing. So this Lord of the Rings themed set does include other undiscovered ring cards, but this is the one that everyone was looking for. It's kind of like the golden ticket. I know that when the person found it, other grading companies were actually offering incentives like, hey, come grade that one card with us and we'll give you $1,000 towards future grading. We'll give you this limited edition set that has that art on it to go with your card. And the buyer, the collector, whoever ended up finding this, went with PSA, who then graded it as a 9, which when it's a one of one card, I think this card could have been graded a 3, which is a low grade in collectors, and it still would have been considered, I think, the most expensive or valuable Magic card out there.
So what, does it go from like 9 to 1 or 0 to 1? Like how does it, what's the scale?
So it goes from 1 to 10, 10 being no flaws, gem mint, nothing wrong with the card, perfectly centered when they printed it, all of that.
So this is a card that has already been made, it's existed, but it's rare, and it turned up on the market or something like that. Is that the idea? Or
yeah,
is this?
They only printed one of this one card, and they threw it somewhere in this set, and someone found it. So as soon as that person found it, all these collectors were like, well, fuck this set. That's the one card I was trying to find. And Magic has been doing crossovers with Transformers in the past, Warhammer, and now Lord of the Rings.
Wow. Yeah, so Lord of the Rings is the new one. So the Lord of the Rings card is the most rare card. It's like, it's not any other theme. It's not a standard like Magic the Gathering theme. It's like they chose the Lord of the Rings card to be the most valuable card.
It looks like it, yeah. Unless the hype dies down, this will always just be the one card that exists of this particular one.
Okay, that makes sense. So even this got a 9. Like even this wasn't a 10. Like it's the most expensive, and it's not even a 10.
Yeah, because whoever it was probably slightly off center. I don't really know what if you go on the PSA website, which is a grading company, and you type in the barcode of this grading, you might be able to find like exactly why they didn't grade it a perfect 10. But I'm sure it's something minute, like the centering is off on when they printed it, or there's like a slight ding somewhere on the edges of the card. When they printed it, there might be some whiting on the edges. So it's probably a tiny little thing like that. But I don't even think it matters what the grade is, because the only one that exists is this one. It's very similar to a Yu-Gi-Oh card that this one kid got specially printed for Make-A-Wish. He said, I want my original character, which ended up being like a Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball, like an OC. I want him printed in my own Yu-Gi-Oh card. And Konami printed this one card just for this kid as a Make-A-Wish thing. Well, the kid ended up getting better. He was fine. And he ended up selling it. And it's still, I think it's graded like a 4 because he didn't really take care of it when he was little. But it's still considered the most valuable Yu-Gi-Oh card because it's the only one out there.
Interesting. And PSA, I'm guessing, doesn't stand for public service announcement.
No. No, that's the name of the actual grading company, which that's a good question. What does PSA stand for? Let me see.
It's like public service announcement. A number 9 has been spotted in the card trading market.
It's the Professional Sports Authenticator. Started off as a sports grading company and has since moved on to other TCGs. It's basically the standard in grading, kind of like CGC. Are you familiar with CGC for comic books?
I am not into the collecting realm yet. Maybe now that I have a little bit more space, but I've never really been much of a collector.
Yeah, well, PSA is basically the premier grader, and there's a lot of them out there. Basically, if your collectible card is graded by PSA, other collectors consider that to be like the standard in quality. Like, they know their stuff, they know what they're grading, their graders are spot on, and because of that, the PSA graded cards are usually worth more than if you were to go with what some consider a lesser grading company or a newer grading company, and those don't go for quite as much. So PSA is considered the standard. Scott and I do get some cards graded, but we don't personally like PSA because of the presentation. We're not concerned about the prestige that comes with having a PSA graded card. So he and I go with places like CGC, which is the most convenient, and they do comic books as well. So when we send them off with Bobby ends up taking care of that on the back end for us, and we're really grateful for it. But when he sends them off, CGC grades both our comics and our cards. They do it all in one. And it's just a cool thing. If you ever want to have something preserved, PSA, CGC, those grading companies are usually a good route to go.
I'll keep it in mind.
But for any MTG graders or collectors, let us know if you ended up passing on this one now that that card is found, or if you're going to try to go for some of the other undiscovered ring cards. Here we have some box office news, and I want to get your opinion on this because I know your finger's on the pulse as far as how some of these movies have been performing this year. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is projected to win its opening weekend, but fall short of its domestic gross expectations. So starring Harrison Ford and directed by James Mangold, who previously did Logan, the film earned $60 million in North America, including preview night screenings. It received mixed reviews, and for anyone that cares, it has an 89% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So according to Deadline, the movie will earn $140 million at the worldwide box office, and the director Mangold has a reported budget of around $295 million. So it sounds like it might be another Kathleen Kennedy flop.
Yeah, I've been hearing, actually, I watched a video today from, what is his name? Thor Skywalker or something like that. He was talking about Kathleen Kennedy and the whole situation with Lucasfilm and this movie. It's not doing well. And yeah, her produced movies haven't been doing well either. And I'm not really surprised. I mean, I kind of see this the way that I see every other Disney produced modern remake. It's just they're dragging their actors back from basically the grave and
yeah,
and making them, it just did not look good. And some people who get really, really nostalgic, they're gonna just, oh, they're back. That will work for them every single time. This was never, ever on my radar. So it would be disingenuous for me to say that I really care. But at the same time, I mean, it does kind of annoy me that this stuff is flooding the market where I don't even want to have to see this. I want them to stop making these.
Right. Yeah. When I posted this on Facebook, a couple of people were quick to be like, well, everything seems to be doing pretty bad at the box office post-COVID. And I'm like, well, hold on. Even just this year, we got Across the Spider-Verse. We got the Super Mario Brothers movie. We got Fast 10, Guardians 3, which you saw. Like, all those movies did fine at the box office. They made millions of dollars. Like, they're doing well. And there's some of those are still in theaters making money for the 4th of July weekend. Yeah. But Indiana Jones, I think that's not the problem. It's not that people aren't going to theaters. We know they are. It just seems like a franchise that, one, the last one was years ago, was not well received, and they're not really offering, to me, I don't think there's any kind of hook to this new Indiana Jones. I saw the last one, and I have zero incentive or zero need to see this one.
I don't know anything about what happens in the actual movie, because surprisingly, I actually haven't really come across any sort of spoilers or anyone saying, "Oh my god, like, do you know what the Indiana Jones movie just did? Like, I can't believe they just did that." I haven't heard anything like that yet. So I imagine that there's probably nothing super interesting about the movie, or it's not quote unquote important for any reason, which wouldn't have any effect on whether I saw it. But what I imagine, based upon little hints here and there, is that they're going to use this movie to attempt to again introduce another Indiana Jones replacement, a Ray Jones, if you will. So that's probably what they're going to do. Like I said, that's not based on anything other than just little hints here and there. But as bad as this movie is doing, I doubt that they're going to do anything else with this.
Well, that's the thing. Some people were saying, well, they should have had, and I don't know if this happens or doesn't either, but they were saying that one idea would have been to have Short Round be the future Indiana Jones. Another one would have been like, hey, this is the story of some of my previous adventures. And then you flash back to a younger actor and you can have a bunch of movies with a younger Indy. You can do a full reboot. Like people wanted Chris Pratt to be Indiana Jones for a while there. But I'm on exactly what you said. I don't think that there's value anymore to new iterations or new stories to tell with Indiana Jones. I just don't think that the younger fan base is there for it. The older fan base is dying off. I think it's just a matter of let's just cut the franchise with this, sell the old movies, sell them forever as like a legacy collection or whatever. Keep re-releasing them in 4K, 8K, whatever those future formats are. And just make your money that way. I really don't think there's going to be a fan base for this in the future.
According to Deadline, it looks like movie is going to earn, like it's projected to earn 140 million at the worldwide box office, and they have a budget of 295. So that is a little underneath half of their budget. And I believe before marketing costs, they have to make what, twice the amount, right? Yeah, something like that. So I don't know.
That's always the number I see. Double whatever the budget they say it is, because that's the break-even point.
Like 295 is not including the marketing, which I think is like a third or something like that usually.
Yeah, it's up there.
Right. So, and then you have to double that. So, yeah.
It's going to be a loss for them. And Disney's already hurting. It's funny how
I know.
It's parallel lives for Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney. Like, this is a good outcome for me.
Yeah, it is funny but I will say, and I guess maybe this is a good thing, both these franchises are not doing good at the box office. So it allows us to really see a very even playing field and stark contrast between the way that these movies are reported on. Because like if this movie is reported one way and like Warner Bros. Movie is reported another way, and they're both failing at the box office, then it goes a pretty long way to tell you what's going on here.
Exactly. Every single time they try to spin it. This next one was also, I guess it was relying on people our age that might have grown up with Beast Wars. It sounds like this one didn't end up doing too well either.
Yeah, Transformers Rise the Beast Wars looks like it's not doing terribly great at the box office. This is actually the lowest grossing so far box office of any of the Transformers franchise. And that's really, again, not really a positive thing. I find this to be kind of funny, especially because a lot of the changes that they've made after Bay has been specifically to, well, it feels very like specifically to get away from Bay's formula. Yeah. And the movies have only really made less money as time has gone on. So
it sounds like someone else.
You saw the movie.
Yeah.
Right. What did you actually think about it?
I gave it a thumbs up because of the Beast Wars. I grew up, that was my Transformers. But I did say also in that post, I'm like, any other fan base, any other generation outside of mine, they're going to be confused as to why these beast machines are in here, because they sort of explain how they're from the past and they're ancient Transformers that are also descendants from the current ones. So they're from the future, sort of, just like in the cartoon. But anyone older or younger than me is going to be like, why do I care about who Optimus Primal is? And there's only so much fan service in there for me that I'm like, oh, that's cool. They didn't even have the Predacons in the film. So there was enough there to satisfy me as a Beast Wars fan.
Mm.
But to anyone else, they're not going to care. They want to see their old Transformers, which are in the movie, but they're a little weird sometimes. Like there's this one moment where all the Transformers give up and they're like, well, this isn't really a spoiler, but they're like, the bad guy won. And the human has to convince them, like, we don't give up. What are you talking about? And then it's like,
God, that's
it's
cringe.
like both Optimuses wouldn't give up. Why are they both giving up? Like the fucking enemy base is right there.
So the actor has something to do. Yeah.
Yes,
It's like, they kind of advertise this movie as a Transformers movie that focuses more on the Transformers than perhaps any other Transformers movie in the past.
And it does.
And it does. Okay, that's good. I mean, at least, yeah, I still hate that they feel like they have to cast an actor. Because like, if people are going to watch this movie for the Transformers, they don't have to pay an actor. There's no reason for them to do it. As a matter of fact, people are asking that people watch animated movies. This is of course a conversation we've always had, but I've never understood that. Aside from the nostalgia, do you feel as though there was any other value?
The CGI actually was not, I thought it was going to be worse in a way because I feel like the budget may not have been as high as some of the previous Transformers movies, like the Michael Bay ones. But I was impressed by the actual machines. There were some parts where, like the land damage or the explosions around, where it's like, oh, that's supposed to be dirt from the ground after a missile hit it. Like, so a lot of that did look fake and it didn't look quite right or finished. It wasn't fully shadowed. Like it had that off gray. You know what I'm talking about? Like the MCU.
Yeah.
It had some of that going on, which I'm like, okay, bring the contrast up a little bit, please. But
yeah.
but otherwise, I like that. The plot itself, and I'm watching this whole thing, and I'm like, this is literally the plot from the Snyder Cut. There's an ancient machine that comes to Earth. It's trying to find basically the mother boxes to transform Earth into the new, or for Earth to be taken over by the big evil Transformer. And they have to team up. The Maximals, they have to all team up and get together to stop basically Steppenwolf from uniting the pieces. That's literally what happens. He has to unite these two pieces, and the Transformers have to stop him. It's kind of funny how I'm watching this, and I'm like, this is the exact plot from the Snyder Cut.
Well, we'll have to see what's in store for the Transformers franchise. I have a friend of mine who is really a big fan of Transformers. He really liked this movie. There was an animated movie that they recently announced, or they even released. I don't recall. Maybe it went to like Netflix or something like that, or Paramount Plus, or I forget. But he's also really excited for that, and he seems to like the Beast Wars movie. So, I mean, if the movie is good, it's good. I just feel like this is, of all the franchises that we're going to talk about today, this is actually one of the biggest, and it's kind of sad that it's not nearly as revered as it was back when Bay had the reins.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how Bay gets made fun of a lot. Like people kind of see themselves as better than his movies or whatever, but those were the ones that the general audience were watching and they were paying to see. And, I don't know about how well those last ones did, like the Last Night, if he was even involved in that, or what his last couple of Bay movies, how they performed. But as soon as they shifted away from it, and Bumblebee, from what I understand, was well received, and this is the universe they're going with, it sounds like they haven't made quite as much money. There's still plenty to see on Netflix. There's all kinds of Transformers cartoons up there, some original Netflix projects. But now with how this one ended, just to keep it spoiler free, they do tease a crossover of Hasbro's franchises, probably two of their biggest ones. And I really don't know if this other franchise it's smaller than Transformers. I don't see like the franchise helping. If anything, it's bringing down Transformers a little bit by this franchise crossing over, because it's, again, a past generation that understands who these characters are. Yeah. Whereas Transformers, I think, hits a wider net.
Yeah, we'll see. Also, I felt like the movie, while it might have been nostalgic, I felt like it's a lot less adult than Bay's movies were. I mean, I felt like after Bay, like especially with Bumblebee, it felt a lot less adult. This one feels even, I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade. It definitely feels less adult than than Bay's films, and yet they're trying to pander to people who are definitely adults because of the time period.
Beast Wars.
What did you think about as far as like that was concerned? Like, was it kind of more family oriented, or?
I would say so. They do focus on there's some humorous parts in it, like a couple of sequences there, which I feel like were in the old Transformers too, where they'd be bantering the humans among themselves, like, oh my god, a fucking giant machine is right here, or the swinging balls that they had on one of the Transformers and all that. They even criticized the criticism that the Transformers can be racist at all. Like, they go to Argentina in this one, and there's a Transformer with an accent there, and they say something about that. Like, that can't be racist. He's a robot type of thing. Like, they make that comment there. So there's some of that in there.
Well, yeah, but it has that Bay edge to it,
Right.
Like this doesn't. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. That's all I can say. I don't have too many strong feelings about it. There's a little bit of a disappointment and kind of concern, I guess, but we'll have to see.
Something real quick, Paramount did confirm but delay Transformers 8 and 9. So depending on how this finishes at the box office, we may or may not see that crossover in the future. Netflix has been celebrating this week as Henry Cavill has returned for his final appearance of Geralt of Rivia in season 3 of The Witcher. So this third season, I call it the final season because no one's going to fucking watch season 4, has been divided into 2 parts, with the first episodes already released and the rest arriving at the end of this month. So in spite of this, The Witcher does remain at the top of Netflix's daily TV rankings. So with less episodes, it's still up there on Netflix's top 10, which is always questionable, right? Because Netflix decides what their top 10 is. So they want to celebrate it. But I think it's great, and I think it's a lot of people kind of celebrating or knowing, the people that are in the know of, all right, season 3 is it for Henry Cavill. Supposedly the showrunners say that there's going to be a reason as to why the recasting is going to be written into the show or whatever. I don't know how they're going to do that. But season 4, in case you missed it, it has, I think, one of the Hemsworth brothers or something taking over as the Witcher. And I think they should have just killed it as soon as Henry Cavill left the show. I think there goes a bunch of its ratings with it.
I think it's so funny how Henry, he's either made famous in a role or he makes a role famous. He does a really good job. People like him. He kind of develops a fan base, and then he kind of just gets like booted for one. It's like, where is he going to go next? And how much magic does Henry really have on his own to make another character into a, can he put lightning back in the bottle, so to speak?
Yeah, from what I understand, he left The Witcher after, I guess during season 3, there was a lot of conflict between him and the writers as to the handling of the character, because he's supposedly, like, we know that he's got those videos of him building PCs and all that, and he says he's a big fan of the Witcher series, and he said he was constantly at odds with the writers of like, no, The Witcher wouldn't do that based on the lore and the novels and the games or whatever. And so I guess it came to a part where they disagreed so much that Henry's like, okay, we're not going to come to an agreement on how we handle this character, so I'm just not going to come back for season 4. And that's around the time when they had him show up in Bland Adam, and he's like, well, I've got that Superman safety net. As soon as James Gunn fired him from that, now he's over at Amazon Studios, and he's going to do a Warhammer 40K series with them. So that's what he's trying to do now, and maybe appear in a future Mission Impossible. Who knows?
I'm really curious if he is able to, because it's very clear he's got an ego. He's got an ego, and he really thinks that he is making these roles. I don't know. I mean, I think that people do like him, and I think that he has built some goodwill because of the roles he's been in the past. But I wonder if this Warhammer thing is really going to take off. I wonder if it's going to take off. I'm interested, or if it's really, because like, I don't know if it's going to be so much based on him. Like The Witcher is a franchise that's very much focused on, the main protagonist, Geralt. Like, he's the icon of the show. Superman is the icon of DC. I don't know about this Warhammer situation, whether he's going to really be able to carry it, or if it's going to be more in like an ensemble situation where he doesn't have to do it as much. So I'm curious.
Supposedly he's going to be a showrunner on that Warhammer show, and he's going to star in it. So I guess we'll see how that goes. I initially thought that they were going to write him out for season 4 as, I don't know if you caught up on The Witcher, but that girl that he's been sort of training as a new Witcher, like, okay, well, she, like in the games, you control her and she becomes a sort of a main character. that they were going to eventually hand it off to her and she will be the new protagonist for the series moving forward if they couldn't have Henry Cavill anymore. But with them just going, now we'll just recast the role. It's like, all right, best of luck. You better have a budget cut too, because you're not going to have the viewership for season 4 that you had on season 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, possibly it'll pay off if they get an actor who isn't going to take as much money.
Yeah, well, we know Warner Brothers Discovery's been doing that with Superman Legacy or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, they got the like CW actor to do a movie Superman.
You basically.
Well, next we have Netflix upcoming live action series adaptation of One Piece. So this is kind of more in my ballpark here. Basically, what they're doing is they're going to be bringing the original Japanese voice cast back for the dub of the TV series. So, how much so far do you know about this One Piece project, Dan?
Well, I've seen the trailer and I've seen all the actors, at least the ones that they've revealed, the characters. But that's about it. I don't know what arc they're able to cover. I don't know if that's a thing as far as like from the trailer, like, oh, they're going to go to this villain or whatever it is. But yeah, mine's pretty surface level.
You're not much of an animation guy in general. I mean, you do watch some anime, right? Because you have been kind of getting into anime a little bit of manga and whatnot. But I'm trying to think of a situation where maybe the voice cast for a series or a franchise that you really liked would be appealing to be brought over to a dub. Is there a situation that you would think like, yeah, that would be kind of compelling?
Well, maybe, let's say another Netflix show like Cowboy Bebop. If you had the option of having an English dub of the same English voice actors from Cowboy Bebop, I think that'd be cool for me. I'd be like, all right, let me hear actual Spike coming out of this actor's face. But that'd just be out of the novelty for it, right? I don't know who this is for, because from what I've seen, anime fans like Scott and them this doesn't seem to be a thing that would get them hooked into this, like, oh, like this will trick them into watching it type of deal. This is more for Japan, isn't it?
Well, okay, so this is the situation. This is kind of how it's unique with anime fans. So it's funny you brought up Cowboy Bebop, and then you said you would like to see them bring the English voice cast over. But the whole point of this is that a lot of anime fans are usually, most often, they're going to prefer the Japanese dub, and they're going to read the subtitles. That is usually the character in any anime that they watch, 9 times out of 10, that they're most emotionally attached to. That's the voice that is the character, because they're always watching the subs and listening to the Japanese dub. So these big characters, Naruto, Luffy, Ichigo, if you have their Japanese voice cast do the Japanese dub for the live action version of whatever the the adaptation is, then arguably they can kind of feel like they're basically watching the anime. I don't know how I feel about this personally, because I don't think that doing that you can't just superimpose these things onto live action adaptations. And I've always been very frustrated and concerned about fans asking for these kinds of good faith moves from these studios again, only to finally get it. Like, hey, we put this character in this perfectly, accurate, attire or cost, basically cosplay or whatever. Mm-hmm. Hey, look, it looks just like the anime, despite anything else. Or hey, we redesigned his characters because you kept on complaining. And then it doesn't really translate. And then the fans, they complain about that too.
Yeah, they say it looks like cosplay.
Right. I don't know if we're going to so here's something interesting. Not all anime voice actors also dub live actions. Now, a lot of them do, but not all of them do. So what's the chance that all of these voice actors are going to do a good job voice acting and bringing to life not just cartoon, animated characters, but live action characters? And will it even fit? I
was thinking that same thing. Because are they looking at the live action actors? They'd have to be, and try to match their emotions or their tone, because that's kind of fuck up with their voice acting. how they would normally do Luffy, for example. And then it's like, this is how I would read that line. But then you see the actor kind of overplaying or underplaying how they would prefer it. Suddenly they have to also underplay or overplay the line, because if they don't, it's going to sound weird, tonally.
Yeah. The reason why animation, well, I won't say, I don't want to be overly simplistic, but a reason why animation and voice acting work really well together is because of the simplicity of the actual animation itself. When you voice act it, you can add to it, right? But with a live action where the person is actually, every muscle in their face that's voicing the words is also responsible for how the sound sounds when it comes out of their mouth, So it's like, in this situation, a dub will always be worse. You're not going to watch a live action, that was originally in English, a live action series, watch the Japanese dub, and the Japanese dub be better than the actual words that are coming out of the person's mouth. It's just not going to happen. you know? So this is not the dub that they think it is.
Right. So where do you stand on this series, having it being supposedly series creator Ichiro Oda is actively involved in this live action adaptation? I know you're a little bit more optimistic when it comes to some of these sometimes, as opposed to like the general weeb fan base, but where do you stand so far after having seen that One Piece trailer?
That is true. I almost forgot, actually, that I'm more optimistic. I had to remind myself. Because honestly, I saw the trailer and it just looks very low budget. It looks like a Netflix show.
Sure.
Super digital, super flat, super low budget. Now, one thing I do appreciate, I will say, is that they didn't try to actually adapt things too closely for the most part. I think that they tried to take inspiration from the original, but they didn't try to adapt it. So I will give them that. And I would say that it's hilarious, honestly, that they would choose One Piece to invest the money that they have in, because it's almost impossible to animate, nevertheless do a live action adaptation. So in general, I would say I'm a little bit unfavorable to this. I don't think that I'm going to watch this at all unless they release some sort of like short clip or something like that, or the first, so many minutes of the first episode. I watch it on accident or because I'm just really curious and I just click on it, against my better judgment.
You got to watch it for Ronin console.
Oh God. If Scott, I tell you what, if Scott wants to do it, then maybe we'll see. But
no.
I'll cover it, but I ain't watching it.
Well, I'll check it out. I'm morbidly curious, especially when anime fan bases are so against it. I'm like, well, let me watch it. Let me check it out.
But they're not, though.
Really? So they're kind of excited?
It's very mixed. Well, the thing is, a lot of people, they watch it and they're like, this isn't bad, or I'm actually going to check this out. Like, so they're being like cautiously optimistic. But that is hilarious, because that is actually, for the anime fan base, that's a go. That's a thumbs up.
Right. I wonder why. This is the exception.
They're always shooting things down. Like, this is complete terror. I can't believe it. They're completely offended as soon as like the first screenshot of something gets released. Like, I can't believe they casted her as Kusaragi. This is going to be an absolute, trash heap. Blah, blah, blah. But then they're like, they look at this piece of Netflix trash, this shovelware AI generated garbage. And they're like, I think I'll give it a try. It's like, there is no God, But yeah.
Well, another old time anime at this point is Naturo. I guess it's celebrating an anniversary soon.
Naruto. You should let me lead this headline.
I know what I said.
Yeah, that was for the comic relief. Yeah, so the original anime is, what they're doing essentially is they're re-releasing 4 episodes for this 20th anniversary event, and they're basically like reanimating them. The actual episodes, I don't have the list in front of me here. One of the episodes is, of course, the famous episode where Naturo, not Naruto, and Sasuke are they're fighting on that lake, earlier in the first season. I believe some of the other episodes that they're doing are going to be in Shippuden. But yeah, it looks interesting. I'll definitely check it out. I'm just curious to see what they are able to do as far as increasing the production values of these episodes. Because the thing is, a lot of these episodes that they were creating, those episodes, they dumped all their budget into them. Like, these were episodes that were already at the peak. They weren't just like, oh, we could have done that better. Like, these were like the best episodes of the franchise, and now they're remaking those. So perhaps, hey, all the success that they've made over this time, they have a little extra money to throw at it or something like that, or I don't know. We'll have to see how they can make it better.
Yeah, currently the release date is set for September 3rd in Japan. Currently, no international release is set to be scheduled yet, or announced at least. This kind of reminds me of Dragon Ball Z Kai that they did like a decade ago, of like, okay, we're going to redo the original Dragon Ball Z, and we're going to cut out all the fluff, and we're going to streamline it, and this is like, and redub it, and sort of have it be like the definitive, I guess, version of Dragon Ball Z in a way. But you're saying they're taking the best episodes sort of and putting them up, and I was almost thinking they should do the same with Naturo. It seems like it does have a pretty big fan base, but it doesn't sound like, I know there's a ton of filler in the show. I know Scott put up like a guide, and he pinned it on our Discord of like, here's the episodes you want to skip, and these are the ones you should watch. So maybe they can do a Kai to sort of re-release it and make even more money.
Yeah. Or a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Like,
right.
That's also a famous remake that actually did improve the original, even though the original was already good, Yeah, I don't know if I would watch Naruto Brotherhood, because even without the filler, the show is extremely long, and I just don't feel like going through that again. Like, some of the episodes were good. I really just want to see certain scenes again, and that's it. But
yeah.
Next up, Warner Brothers Japan and Wit Studios. In other words, Wit Studios is producing a Suicide Squad Isekai, which is actually the title of the project. Nevertheless, it is Suicide Squad, and it is an Isekai, hence the namesake. They announced this during Anime Expo 2023. It's going to be based upon DC characters, particularly from the Suicide Squad, namely Harley Quinn and Joker. The series was going to combine the worlds of Isekai, which doesn't really mean anything, because Isekai is every other world, everything. It could be any world, you could have an Isekai in New York City. And Suicide Squad in an epic and violent fantasy. So that's going to be exciting. Nice to see DC going dark again. Directed by Eri Osada, Kobato key animator. The anime will feature screenplays from Tappei Nagatsuki. He did Vivi for Aisong. Really great animation by Mappa, by the way. And Eiji Umehara, which is the ReZero Starting Life in Another World creator, with promotional artworks by Akira Amano from Psycho-Pass. So these are all bangers, by the way. Vivi is a banger, ReZero is a banger, and Psycho-Pass, that whole franchise is a banger. So I saw the trailer. Did you see the trailer, Dan?
I did, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, it looks super Japanese. It looks like it's non-Americanized. This is straight up Japanese. Like, I know when they first did the Arkham anime called Gotham Knights to celebrate the Dark Knight, like it's like a Nolan-verse anime, basically. Mm-hmm. I didn't know some of those shorts. I'm like, I think that's American. I think this is Japanese, but I guess the whole thing was Japanese. And that was like their toe into doing DC anime. And then they did Batman Ninja, which was well received. It was kind of crazy and wacky. And I think there might have been one more after that. But now with this one, it seems like it might be another hit for them. It seems like for some reason they can hire these Japanese anime studios to put out a stylized anime based on DC characters that they don't get crucified for. Like, these look like character designs by David Ayer, but it's okay. Like, it's a tattooed smile on the Joker. And like,
and
some
the characters
but
they're very, Harley Quinn is very David Ayer-ish. I just think of a word that could use. The reason why I watch anime is because of things like this. It's because it's not, modern Hollywood movies. So I'm really excited. It's got that edge to it that I expect, and not that crappy like sophomoric James Gunn edge, but like David Ayer's edge, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited. Wit Studios is very, very good. I love Wit Studios. They've been a little bit kind of on the lull lately. I hope that this is a big hit, gives them a little bit more attention.
Did they do Spy X Family? I think I saw a headline combining Spy X Family with this film for some reason. Maybe they were just comparing the character designs.
Wit did do Spy X Family along with Cloverworks, I believe.
Okay.
It's like a joint venture. They did Ranking of Kings, which is actually one of their biggest current running franchises right now. And they've done many other things. Vivi was Vivi was actually Wit. I said it was Mappa. I need to correct myself. I believe Vivi Fluorite Eyes song was actually Wit. And that was fantastic. A lot of people actually didn't like it, but I don't agree with those people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's I'm pretty excited about this. I hope that it does well. Wit need to win. And if Warner Brothers is going to take a W, then they might as well take a W for this.
Well, one thing I will applaud them on is Dune, the first one. I really enjoyed it. I think Denis Villeneuve was the director on that one, and that was the whole reason I saw it. I'm like, I'm not a Dune guy. I know nothing about the franchise. I had seen the movie one time, the old one, and it wasn't really for me. It was kind of a little too experimental or out there. But I saw the first part, and I enjoy it. And now Warner Brothers Picture is planning on a trilogy of this Dune saga. So they had previously announced Dune Parts 1 and 2, but now it's a third film is what they're planning, and they're saying it might be based on Dune Messiah, which Dune fans will know what that means. I don't. I'm just along for the ride.
It sounds awesome.
So this comes...
It sounds like something that Zack Snyder would do.
Yeah, that's true. So this comes as they're trying to promote the sequel, and this is pretty common with studios where they're like, they want to make it seem like they did it with Transformers, right? The Beast Wars one. They're like, and there's another one coming, so check out this one first. It's a way for them to promote, as if saying they're dedicated to this. Whereas you and I know, everyone knows, I think, at this point that doesn't mean anything. They can cancel Dune Part 3. If Dune Part 2 is a flop, unless they're filming Part 3 right now, they could easily just say, yeah, we're not making that movie. It's just never coming out. I think that happened with something recently where they're like, yeah, we're going to do a sequel, and nothing, it was just quietly put away. Pretty common.
I am happy that Warner Brothers, because they've driven so many very successful, very, very talented creators away. So the fact that they've actually trusted Denis, who isn't really guaranteeing box office with a lot of his projects, even though he's very good. It's clear he's making works of art, but his movies don't really make a lot of money. He's getting a back-to-back like James Cameron would, which is crazy. So the fact that Warner Bros. Is doing that, I have no idea why, because that's just not what they do. They don't do that stuff.
They have no rhyme or reason these days, though.
Yeah, they're insane.
If they have a massive success, it ends up, like I was saying last week, it's a homer. Like they just, it's a fluke. They never intended it. Like anytime they try to have a success, they end up losing millions. And then when they don't try, or when they try to stomp something out, like that first Joker film, it ends up making them over $1 billion. Well, not them, but that Chinese company that they split it with.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this looks like it's a massive success. Let's sell over half of the ownership of the project, Yep. And then it's like, oh, look, it did amazing. Well, oh well. Hey, this looks like complete trash heap. Let's like up the marketing costs and like promote it and push it and pay off all the journalists, and oh, look, it's a flop. Well, at least it won't look like a flop or sound like a flop.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely happened recently. I'm of two minds though of these Dune films, because I mean, obviously a lot of the people that were there when they mistreated, Zach and Ray Fisher and all of them are no longer there. For years it was like, get rid of Toby Emmerich, get rid of Walter Hamada, who else was it? Diane Nelson? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was.
And
that's
now
how long they've been gone. Yeah, exactly.
Now
I'm happy to forget them.
And it's like, all right, the people we were boycotting this, or at least I was boycotting it over, are no longer there. But now I'm boycotting for a different reason, which is I don't want to give money to James Gunn's universe. Obviously the receipts to The Flash and to Blue Beetle and to Aquaman 2, probably the Joker 2, are going to feed into how big a budget those films get. And I don't want to contribute to it. But I want to support things like Dune 2 because I know that's what looks to be a Denis Villeneuve passion project. Same with Todd Phillips' Joker 2.
Yeah, I would say that Warner Brothers they're so random and so just off the wall that it's possible that they could just accidentally have let their director make a movie on their own and just forgot to cut it to pieces. It's actually possible that they that they just forgot to do it because they're so inept. But here's a crazy idea. I want to get your opinion on this. So we see all these producers and whatnot coming and going, and the main issue always seems to rear its head again, that the new people they put in there, they don't have the best interest. Well, they don't have my best interest in at heart, right? I'm wondering if any producer could give us what we want, and it's just because of various social and circumstantial factors and things like that are contributing to the direction in which they're headed. Maybe James Gunn could bring the Snyderverse back, or I don't even like to use the term Snyderverse, like just let him finish his 5-movie arc, things like that. Like maybe it could just be any old Joe in the seat, because it doesn't matter who has been producing the films. They've kept on failing after Justice League. I think there's something deeper going on than just who's producing. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it is it's the fans, man. I think it's like, I get that the fans that are like us, we're not going to make up most of the box office. We're going to make a difference, but for whatever reason, it's just not, whatever they're producing now is not capturing the general audience. Whatever that reason is, I've said in the past that sex appeal or whatever, like people like Zach or these other directors like Nolan, they know how to market a film or a project. And they know how to get a film like The Prestige, for example, something that isn't tied to a franchise, doesn't have toys involved or whatever, and still make it a giant hit because of the way they sold it to an audience. And the people now in charge, they don't have that person. They don't know how to do that. I don't think James Gunn is the person to do that either. So I think it's all a marketing thing, because they're not convincing us, you and I, we're not convinced of seeing any of these. As I said, the closest I'm getting is Dune Part 2 and 3, maybe Joker Folly Ado. But the fact that I have my doubts goes to show that they've hurt this fan base that much. But as far as them trying to capture the general audience, they don't have a clue how to do that.
I think part of it, and I might have talked about this with you in a previous episode, I think part of it might just be that, and I agree actually on the audience situation. I do think that we are the problem. Although I hate to group myself into it, I am part of the audience. I think that we're all very skeptical and paranoid about people, individuals, producers, but even more so directors who are auteurs and who what they say goes, and they're going to make their movie, right? They don't want someone coming in and taking Superman and making their movie with him, or taking this. They want someone who doesn't really have a name, who kind of just falls into the background, who doesn't have anything to say about the franchise, and who will always agree with the fans in any circumstance. Like the guy, Muschietti or whatever. Like, yeah, he did it or whatever, but it's like, he's not an auteur. He's a studio yes man. He just makes movies. He's just a warm body, basically. And I just think that is actually what audiences think that they want. And whenever someone gets in there who's like, oh, I'm going to make my movie with your character, and I hope that you like it, but I'm going to put my heart and soul into it, audiences immediately go on the defensive. Oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. I think they're confused, though. They're confused because, like, whenever they see, like, a producer, for instance, making choices and not backing down from them, like Kathleen Kennedy, right? They conflate that with people like Nolan and Villeneuve and Zack Snyder and Bay and all these like auteur, like my way or the highway kind of people. It's like, no, it's like you want a passionate creator here, but you just want them, a passionate creator who also is going to be making something that's also mostly in your best interest. Does that sound pretty correct to you?
Yeah, they don't understand. And that, again, goes back to marketing. everyone chattering and talking about Zack still years later, after he hasn't produced the DC film since I think 2017 is when he filmed the Snyder Cut, if you don't count the additional photography. I mean, they're still talking about those fucking movies. The thing is, the audience will go, oh, that's fucking ridiculous. Kryptonians were the old gods? Fuck that shit. I need to go see this and see how terrible it is. You know, they're still going to go pay and see that shit. But by having someone like you were saying, someone like Gunn, who's like, the fans want red underwear and they want a smiling Superman that's going to save cats from a tree. So we're going to give them what they want. And well, guess what? People don't, like you said, they don't know what they fucking want. That's going to appease that minority fan base of Superman hyper fans. And the general audience is going to yawn, just like they did at Superman Returns. They're going to go, Superman's fucking boring.
Yeah. I think people want to be under the illusion that Superman is, they're being given Superman from DC. And there are people there at DC, like all working hard to make Superman, and then DC just pops out and then it's on the screen. Oh, look, it's there. They don't want to think that like, oh, this is Zack Snyder's Superman. Like, oh, what does Zack Snyder have to do with DC? Like, get him out of here. I just want my Superman, like, you know, or I want my Flash or Wonder Woman or whatever. Like, get these people out. And so I think that's kind of the idea. They don't like the idea that like the creator owns the character in any kind of way. They want to feel like they own it. And the more the creator has to say, they feel like, oh, that's not my character because this ambiguous franchise isn't the one giving it to him. It's a person. So yeah, I would say you're probably on the same mind in regards to that.
Well, and what Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't understand is that, and I'll give some credit to Disney in that the comic fans will be there to see that big iteration of Superman or Iron Man or whomever, as much as it offends them, because that character is on the big screen and they have to watch it. So they're going to go see it and it's not going to be a big number, but they're going to go regardless. It's the ones that you want to capture again, the ones that are like, holy shit, Superman there's a city being destroyed around them. There's a ton of action in this. I got to go see that shit. That looks incredible. That looks way better than what they did with Returns. Or Justice League, they finally have them up there. I hear that, you know, look at this, that they're going to put Darkseid in it or whatever it is. That it factor, as much as those fans are pissed off, they're still going to show up and they're going to see it because they're in it for good or bad. And they'll show up for shitty ass Flash. But again, as those numbers showed, that's a small number. Those fans are not the ones you should be catering to.
Yeah. I don't know how long you want to stay on this particular topic, but I would say to kind of add a positive spin to this, or potentially positive spin, I think that just like with Disney, especially with their TV shows, because they've had a lot of bad ones, and then when like a quote unquote good one or something that has a little better production value and people, it's a little better than like the line of garbage they have been producing comes out, they act like, oh man, it's back. Like, I think it's possible that if Warner Brother coincides a creator that has a plan, that knows what he's doing, that has a voice, that they're able to protect him, and the marketing is good, they coincide that with the resurgence of some quality, right? Fans are going to go to see it and they're going to think that it's the best thing ever simply because you've been getting bad movie after bad movie. A solid movie comes out, a very good movie comes out, and people, whatever that is, people are going to like it. But hopefully at that time, it's coming from a person who actually has the ability to continue it, as opposed to it being this random Warner Brothers project where, oh, look, it happens to be good. You know, like they need to actually take advantage of the hype, and because it's possible to like get people back on board. People want to be back on board. People want to like this stuff.
Yeah, one of those examples was Todd Phillips with his Joker he was like, yeah, I want this to be the first line of DC Black Label films. I want to do Clayface next. And they were like, no, we're not doing that. And now they're like, here's your one sequel because you got $1 billion. If you want to do it. And he was like, I guess, he kind of, it seems like he took some convincing, right? I feel like he should have been like, can I get my fucking Clayface line? Can I get my DC Black Label line now? Because we've proven that this fucking works. And it seems like maybe they went, well, do another one and we'll see.
Aquaman 2 came out already, right?
No, it might as well have. I mean, no one's going to talk about it when it does.
Yeah, I forget. But so that movie made a lot of money and he also got a sequel, but they didn't really give James Wan any more leeway because he made a successful movie. It doesn't seem like they want to hire people who've been associated with Warner Brothers for a long time and are successful. Like at best, they'll hire people from Disney that were successful, but they won't actually, people who are like really committed only to their own brand, who've done a good job. They don't want to give them more work.
And now we know that Aquaman 2 is another butchered project. Like James Wan 2 weeks ago was like, yeah, this has been a challenging process to change, to say the least, because of all the changes at Warner Brothers Discovery. We know that at one point, Michael Keaton's Batman was in Aquaman 2. Then that changed to Ben Affleck's Batman. And now they changed it to supposedly it's just a different character entirely, that they're not even going to have Batman in this film. And that all leads to the stuff from The Flash, which let's jump ahead to that one. And then we'll come back to that studio lot bit of The Flash. The Flush being the latest under James Gunn's watch. It is underperforming at the box office, having barely recouped its production budget after 3 weeks. So global earnings are at $245 million. It is projected to reach just $300 million, making it a financial disappointment for Warner Brothers Discovery. From what I understand, even if it finished at $350 million, that would still earn it an estimated loss of $300 million. So it would need to make us a little over $500 million just to break even. After all the reshoots they did a reshoot. Michael Keaton did, then they had Ben Affleck, then they had Henry Cavill in it at the end at one point, and now they have, I don't give a shit about spoilers, they have George Clooney in there. So it's just based on whomever is the latest one in the seat, which in this case it's Gunn.
I'm disconnected from the movie from the standpoint of I haven't watched any promotional material from it. Even when you post things like clips, like videos, I don't even want to watch like things that are like, hey, look how bad this is. Like, I know how bad it is. I already know. I don't need to be reaffirmed. But yeah, I almost feel that this is a coincidence. Like, part of me really wants to like celebrate that this is a loss, but I just feel like this isn't framed properly. Like, I wish that everyone was saying this movie is failing at the box office because it is bad, right? And this is a problem with leadership. It's a problem with, the creatives. It's a problem with the marketing and their decisions. And this is a deep issue with Warner Brothers and the current regime. But that's not. It's like, from everything that I've heard, it's like, despite, a movie with heart, it shows up late to the box hour or some dumb, like quippy little thing. People are not putting their finger on the massive elephant in the room. So therefore, people who are casuals, I don't think they're actually understanding like the narrative here. But that's why, we have you and the rest of the Spartans on Twitter. Help set the narrative. But the media is doing a terrible job.
Awful job. And then the fan base is, of course, the people in those DC groups that I post this on, because as you said, I'm trying to shape the narrative as well, doing what they did back in 2016 with BVS, right? So that's exactly what it's like. All right, fuck, let's give them a taste of their own medicine, right? So they're pointing every excuse under the sun that I've seen, right? They're including blaming Zack Snyder because, it came from his universe. Of course it did terrible. And finally,
or like post-COVID and
COVID still, it's got a lot of competition. Well, it's still got a few weeks. That's probably when it'll get the most whatever. People don't go to theaters anymore in spite of all the giant hits lately. To something as light as, I liked it. It was good. I don't get why. It's like, why just think a little. Why do you think no one else is seeing it?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I have a friend, and the friend that I mentioned now is the same one I mentioned earlier in the podcast, who liked the Beast Wars movie. I don't agree with 90% of his taste. I quite disagree with it. But he loved The Flash. He said it was like, there was some bad CG, but if there wasn't that bad CG in there, it'd be like a 9, he says.
Wow.
And the first thing he said when he was saying that he really enjoyed it was that there was a lot of nostalgia. Like, man, you guys are going to love this. There's plenty of nostalgia, lots of Easter eggs. Like, that's all he wants. So I wonder if he is representative of the actual audience that have gone to see this film, and the people who haven't seen the film actually haven't seen it for other reasons, like competition or ad marketing, which there was not good marketing for this from what I've seen.
It had a ton of it had a Super Bowl spot. Remember that? It had like that huge Super Bowl thing, and then it's like, go to flash.com to see the full trailer. Cost them millions per minute.
I mean, I'm not saying a lot of marketing. I'm just saying poor marketing. Like, I don't think that any of the marketing really did. Of course, at the same time, I did say this, so I have to be honest. I didn't really watch a lot of it. I saw like GIFs and things that moved as you scroll down your various feeds without your actual permission. So like, I saw like, oh, you know, I had to watch that. And I saw like, you know, still screenshots and whatever, but I never actually engaged with anything. I guess I really can't honestly speak to that, but I sometimes wonder if maybe the movie did in fact flop because of other reasons and not because it was bad. Because Aquaman it looked like trash. I never saw it, but it looked like trash. I engaged with that a lot more as far as the marketing was concerned than I am with this. Why is it that the narrative for this is so much worse than Aquaman? Aquaman was also trash, and Aquaman did great.
Yeah, I think it might have been because it was closer to those films that were like, oh, these are pretty good, like Wonder Woman. People were talking about and went to go see BVS, Suicide Squad. And I think it was because it was closer to that era that people like myself went out and saw it. Kelly and I went to go see Aquaman, not knowing what we know now of everything that was going on behind the scenes. Not knowing that, like Zach said, Aquaman is its own universe moving forward. It's not a part of his stories.
Yeah. Having that said, I think that the most convincing reason why this movie did poorly is actually not even necessarily because of its own merit, although that might have had an effect. I would say it's because all the past movies under Gunn's supervision have been doing very poorly, and I don't think anyone has any confidence or desire to see this movie, regardless of the quality of the movie.
Well, I will continue to dance on the grave of this one as it continues to lose money, and as people have said, Blue Beetle's next. Just wait, another big fucking flop coming. And the last thing that happened was very symbolic of Warner Brothers right now, as a fire broke out at Warner Brothers Studios lot, and it was quickly contained by their own fire department. They have someone in-house, just like Disney does. The causes are unknown, but no injuries were reported.
James gonna just sitting at a table drinking coffee. This is fine.
It made for great photo ops, man. I saw that big WB water tower and the giant smoke behind it. It's like, that's perfect right there. That's symbolism.
Yeah, Superman comes by and he shoots a beam at the water tower, and the water comes out and takes the fire.
Oh, that's what they would have wanted, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
But there you have it, a lot of ups and downs for the studios, and some of which we will celebrate. And a lot of anime news too, which I was happy about, especially since you're on this week. Before we head into the Brokept block, we do have this week's comment from Adrian on Patreon, who said of last week's episode, quote, "I remember that Batfleck announcement for the Flush back in 2020, and something bothered me about it. Why did they need to promote multiple Batmen for a Flash solo film? All that money spent on marketing and PR was wasted. I think the AI CGI animation in some scenes were used so that they didn't have to pay the actors for their likeness. That's the only thing that comes to mind. That Superman casting came and went. What's wild to me is that his name was tied to Superman in 2019. WB execs, as usual, up to their manipulative games. I don't really care for those actors. I want Snyder and Cavill and the Snyderverse restored. I hope all the Gunverse projects get delayed for a long time due to the strike and that the recent fire at the WB lot. Anytime I see a Snyder anti or a Gunverse supporter on my timeline, I block immediately. Same thing. I do the same thing. I don't have the energy to interact with them. I don't need to see their BS on my timeline. I think I saw that interaction you had with that writer, Daniel. That was Brian Hitch. It was hilarious. It's been years since Man of Steel and BVS, and people are still talking the same hate nonsense. They need to be called out on it." End quote. I appreciate it, Adrian. I appreciate the words of encouragement in spite of the hate mail I get sometimes. Like it never happened before Gunn was on. These are Gunn fans, and they're pretty loud, man. But you and I are on the same wavelength, Adrian. appreciate the same concerns too, especially with that actor being named back in 2019. So this was all planned. And I think for the Batman being in the Flash solo film, I think it's because it was loosely based on Flashpoint at some point. Zack said he wanted to do something better than Flashpoint back when he was attached. And it sounds like the final project, while it takes some story beats from Flashpoint, there is no Thomas Wayne. There is no weak Superman like in Flashpoint. They instead did the Supergirl thing. There's merging of weird universes. From what I understand, Jeff Johns did not get screen credit for based on Flashpoint, so I don't think he got a paycheck out of this. So there's that good thing, I guess, going for it. But that's what I see the reason as for the multiple Batman in the Flash, is that it was originally going to be Flashpoint or something similar to it at least.
Yeah, I'm sure this has changed like a million times due to a various different lot of factors. But yeah, Adrian, on point for sure.
Let's head into the final portion of today's episode, which is the Bro Kept Block, what we've been doing since you last heard us. So Millennial Mike, what's been going on with your weeks? What have you been playing, reading, or watching? Or what's been making you broke?
So moving, I moved across town about 20 minutes from where I was before, a little bit closer to where everything is. So that's nice. And I got my own place. So I was, I was shacking up with a roommate before. I'm on my own now, a lot more space, a lot more quiet. Currently recording right now from that current studio. So everyone will have to let me know how the new studio sounds. But yeah, it's nice. Got my dual monitor set up. I got my PC out from underneath the desk so I can see the lights and all that. It's really cool. My TV is actually back up in operation. My smart lights are all up so I can control my theater lighting and everything like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I know. I had that in my previous room, but when I moved out with my roommate, there wasn't a lot of opportunities to put smart lights up because your roommate's not always going to appreciate changing the way that the switches work and everything. So all my anime, I got this DVD rack and everything was like stuck in boxes. So I took them all out. Now they're getting a chance to breathe. I love that. They're all like kind of displayed right next to my TV. So it's like, oh, it's right there. I'm going to watch it. And now the likelihood I'm going to watch it is a lot higher. I got this new box set of Akudama Drive. I can't wait to crack that one open. That's going to be nice. So yeah, it's been really great. I've been here for about a week and a few days now. See, a 3-day weekend because of the 4th, which is nice. So I've gotten a lot of extra time to put things away. Almost done. So yeah, it's been really great. As far as like watching, I saw Spider-Verse. I'm not sure if I talked about that on the show or
I don't think so. I think we had talked how we were excited for it.
Yeah. I saw Spider-Verse and I have criticisms. Long story short, so that I don't go like into all the nitty-gritty, it's just too much multiverse for me. I was kind of open to it originally because at that time, the whole multiverse thing seemed like it was pretty new. And now we've already gotten pretty into the thick of it with all these different franchises. And I'm seeing this and I just feel like there's so much like Easter eggs and just all this empty cameo MCU-esque stuff. And it takes away from a lot of like the heart from the characters. I even use the term heart. It takes away from the story and character progression of the characters. And it also opens up so many opportunities to be loosey-goosey with timelines and with consequence, with stakes. None of those things matter. Like basically they can have whatever happened in the beginning and middle of it and then change it at the end so that way the stakes don't really equal. They don't really directly correlate to the actions of the characters throughout the series. So it feels inconsequential. Yeah, everyone could die at the end, but it still doesn't feel like the characters' actions have consequences. So that always frustrates me with most superhero stuff. But now that this whole multiverse thing is popular with everything, I think it's just taking away from storytelling, in my opinion. But yeah, I saw that. Not really playing any games lately. Final Fantasy 16 came out. My brother's been playing it. He says he loved it, but I don't have PS5. He spent the little money that he has to get a PS5. I think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah,
but
me too.
he really wants this to play this Final Fantasy 16 game, and it looks pretty cool. But yeah, I'm gonna have to just wait for PC. I'm sorry, I can't.
I agree.
I can't do it.
Play it on PC using a Microsoft platform or whatever, and get your Final Fantasy in.
Yeah. I mean, I'll wait. I memean, I don't think anyone's going to spoil that game for me. I'm not really in the situation where that's going to happen. I can't wait for 7 remake part 2. What do they call it? Rebirth. That's going to be hype. Yeah. I mean, a lot's happened. A lot's changed. A lot of firsts, a lot of new stuff.
You're gonna
And
throw a housewarming party like in the Cable Guy?
yeah, multiple. Because
Really?
yeah, I mean, because the apartment is small. So, and I have a lot of friends that I want to invite over. So it's either going to have to be like filtering people in and out. Like, okay, everyone gets to stay for like 1 hour or 2 hours and then leave. And now people come in. But I don't want to do that. Like, I want to chill with my friends, and then we'll just have different group next time, you know?
That's awesome, man. One day I'm going to head over to that. I don't know if you care what state it is, but I'm going to head over to that state to visit because some of the other hosts live on there too. And Scott and I have talked about this and do our little rounds, visit everyone. So it'd be cool to maybe one day see your place.
That would be sick. We could even record an episode live.
Yes, that'd be fun.
That would be sick. Yeah, okay. Well, hey, let me know.
Yeah, you can show me your favorite anime and I can be like, ooh, interesting. And I'd have so many questions.
Hey, we could record it, you know?
I once went to go see that One Piece. Actually, I've seen One Piece, the Vegas movie or the casino movie. I forgot what it's called. Like the big gambling one, the Golden City. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was in theaters. And a bunch of my coworkers wanted to go see it. And I'm like, all right, I'll come along. Cause I'm like, whatever. I don't know. And there was a bunch of cheering and clapping for shit. And I've said this before. I wanted to pause the movie and be like, wait, stop. What's he mean by you're not the only god I fought before? What does that mean? Tell me. Why are you clapping? What's he turning into? Yeah. Is that like Super Saiyan 3? What's happening?
Oh, the gears like Luffy.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I enjoy watching anime movies in theater when possible. I live in a more rural-ish area. So the drive to get to a place that does show some of the smaller anime films that aren't like the massive ones that show everywhere, like My Hero or something like that. It's a little bit more of a drive usually. So if not like a lot more of a drive, like in most situations, Chicago is like the closest place where you can actually see a lot of these like smaller anime. And by smaller, I mean just like not the biggest movies, but yeah.
Well, on my end, I did watch a couple things. I watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix, and it's a 3-parter. They break it down by his weightlifting, which is part 1. Then they go into the acting, which is part 2, and then the politician, which is part 3. And I enjoyed it because I've liked so many of his films, like Commando, Terminator 2, and 1, and like even in a way, Jingle All the Way. Like there's a lot of little funny movies. He's got a unique palette of movies that he's made, good or bad, that I find very enjoyable still. The First Predator, which I don't think he covered on the documentary, but getting to know as much as possible the man behind all of these things, like his upbringing, why he is the way he is, how detached he was from his family, from his country in many ways, by truly sinking his whole life into the US. I mean, all of that I found fascinating, and it still felt like there was a mask in front of all that. So I don't feel like it felt like he still had this defense up when he was discussing his life and some of the issues. But I think that's as close as we're going to get to sort of knowing the real Arnold. It's very similar to the Michael Jordan documentary, where I still felt like he had a defense up when he was doing the Last Dance stuff. Like when he talked about his dad, even he decided to just get up and take a break instead of like, diving into getting vulnerable with the camera type of thing. So very similar to that. And I enjoyed seeing that still though, because you don't see that side of Arnold at all, like ever. It was the politician when he was talking out in public or he was promoting a film.
Did you find any of his like weightlifting, the weightlifting part to be like educational or like useful or informative in any kind of way?
I do wish that he had talked about the process more, like what his routine was. He very briefly touched on, like at one point when he moved to the US, his living room, which wasn't an apartment, it was literally a room that was attached to a gym, and he lived there, would get up and lift weights. And he did sort of compare himself. Like he would say, I compared myself to some of the other people there, and I'd want to be the strongest or the biggest or whoever won Mr. Universe. I'd be like, I'm going to beat him next year. He had a competitiveness to him because he had an older brother, and that's where he got that from. People like Arnold are made to be who they are for the rest of their lives based on what happens in those early years. And I found that a lot of people that where the father pit the siblings against each other, you'll find that they're extremely competitive adults. They'll have that drive to do an extra set or 2 or 3 or do an extra day of workouts instead of taking a rest, overdoing it. And as opposed to someone that maybe didn't have that growing up. But unfortunately, he didn't go into like, well, this is what I would have wanted was, here's what my day looks like at the gym. And then, have him go through that like briefly. But instead he talked about the steroid use, and he said, using old footage of, well, it accounts for 5% of my gains, and I only use it for the months leading up to the competition. But we know he had heart problems later on in life. So I think, he probably glossed on that a little bit. And yeah, I wish he had gone over that more. So I personally didn't get anything of value from his workout routines because there wasn't really anything shown. Instead, I understood how or why he was so competitive growing up.
I see. I was watching the trailer, and I think the trailer came on. It was like they had a reel, and I was really only actually watching the reel because at the end they were going to show like something from Rebel Moon. But like in that reel, they had something about the Arnold thing, and I saw him talking about like, marking down his, counting, and he would like lift this and do this and whatever. It was like, oh, okay, like this is like a routine kind of thing. I'm interested. Like if he talks about this, I might actually watch it for that. But then, the fact you mentioned that it wasn't so much of the documentary, I guess maybe it's not so.
What you saw in that reel is it. Like him marking on the chalkboard. Like I did this many sets, like, and then by the end it'd be full. Like that was literally, he doesn't really go into it.
Okay.
But it was still worth watching, if anything, because of the movies like Terminator 2. When you get to episode 2, it's like, oh, this is cool. He talked about how big a deal it was to do Terminator 1 and 2, how he didn't want to be the villain in Terminator 2, and James Cameron was like, no, you're not. But then there was this competition between him and Sylvester Stallone that I didn't know about. So I think part 2 was the most interesting because of all of the behind the scenes information, how I forgot her name in Terminator 1 and 2, but Sarah Connor, the actor, how she was like, they had doubts over Arnold Schwarzenegger being the villain. They're like, this guy's he's a bodybuilder. He's not an actor. So there's a lot of fascinating stuff in there. I think part 2 was the most valuable to me. And then the politician one, it's like, okay, it's kind of neat seeing his trajectory up and down, but it didn't really, I felt like we didn't need a whole hour of that. And then I would have wanted more of his workout in part 1, unfortunately, but it was still a solid documentary. I loved it, if anything, for part 2. And the other thing I got to see was, I'm almost done with it. I'm in the last act of it. I was actually watching it right before we recorded, is Megan, that like sort of Child's Play-ish, where it's like that AI robot that's running around, and the AI learns so much to the point where it wants to protect a little girl that it's friends with at all costs. Kind of like, again, that Child's Play remake that they did of like, oh, even the parent by grounding her is hurting her. Therefore, I must hurt the parent to stop her from hurting, that kind of thing. So it's fascinating. I do like that and I saw the making of, and I'm like, okay, I appreciate it. Where the doll is literally a little girl, a little actor that they put like a mask on. And that's what makes it look so, like, they don't CGI the doll in that case. Like, they'll CGI her blinking and all that stuff. But for the most part, there's practical effects being used in the film. And that makes me appreciate it more because, yes, it's a little human underneath, but it looks real. It looks like a real android walking around and killing people.
You want that, like, uncanny valley. So you want it to feel, because that's actually, it's smart they work backwards, in my opinion. So instead of like trying to create like a CGI character or like an actual like robot or something like that, they have a person, and then they try to take away the humanity from the person to make it like human, but just not quite. That's what you want. It's like, it's eerie. It's weird. It's like, that's not right.
Yeah. And it's off-putting. Yeah. Especially because, the actor's trying to move like a robot, but the robot's also learning as they go to act more, I guess, human-like. It's getting more independent as the movie goes on. Like the little girl teaches her how to dance, so you see her dancing at one point, and it's interesting. Like I think I'm appreciating it more for the special effects rather than the story. Like it gets a little, it's all over the place as far as tone because suddenly the girl is like angry and she's having these issues, which reflects on the robot, and it's like, okay, how do we get from that point to this point all of a sudden? So there's a little bit of that pacing issues, I guess is what I would call it, but. Yeah, it's not a horror film. I wouldn't call it a horror, more of a suspense.
Yeah. It feels kind of like the latest edition in a long line of these like high production value, PG-13, pseudo horror suspense movies like The Invisible Man and there's another one I'm thinking of. What is that movie?
Hollow Man?
No. There are these movies that have come out, I'd say like in the past like 10, 15 years, something like around there. Like I've reviewed some of them on my channel where it's like, Invisible Man, there was another one I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like, it's like a suspense movie that kind of plays, they advertise it kind of like a horror movie, but it's just kind of like a really weird suspense movie with like a gimmick, I guess you could even say, A Quiet Place is kind of like that. Although A Quiet Place's concept and theme is so unique and whatnot that it really is something that I think it's worth. This movie, I saw the movie and I saw her like dancing down like a hallway, and I thought like that looks kind of like Sia. Oh, that's kind of cool. But then the actual how's the cinematography? What do you think about that?
It didn't catch my attention. It wasn't anything like, oh, look at that shot. Like it wasn't anything like that, especially for something like this where you can do something creative. Like suddenly the robot, shows up or comes out of a hallway. Like, I don't know, something like that. Maybe it all happens in the final act. I don't know. I'm not there yet, but up to this point, all those lead ups, I'm like, okay, there's nothing too crazy here.
Well, it didn't seem like it really played a lot with light and shadow very much. There's not a lot of mood, like aside from just like the fact that, okay, there's this weird robot thing and this is what it's doing. And, it's trying to play on like, social fears of AI and robots and that whole kind of thing. So like, yeah, that's there. And that does add to the mood, I suppose. But as far as like the way it visually looked, it didn't really it was very uninspired from what I saw. So I was kind of like, I don't need to.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the final act. And I'm excited to kind of just finish it and see what they do with it.
What you think?
And I do like the ideas of like it being able to fake phone calls. Like I'm like, oh, that's right. Like our fucking phones are computers now. Of course she'd be able to do that. There's some neat ideas in there on how she's able to fool and manipulate people that I hadn't thought of. So I think there's some neat ideas in there. But yeah, I think the execution is a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit off as far as maybe production value when you were talking about the cinematography or the direction. But I don't know. I'm still impressed by the special effects, at least. That never at one point yet looks like an actor in a mask, if that makes any sense. It's still, I buy that it's a fucking AI. Yeah. But there you have it. Some movies, some TV show, and some catch-ups with Millennial Mike and I as we wrap up not just the Brocat block, but the episode. So Millennial Mike, thank you so much for helping with the hosting duties this week. And please, if there is anywhere that they can interact with you, let them know where they can find you.
Yep. Discord, Reason I'm Broke, Lazy Gaming Guys, The Exiles Network. You can find me, of course, on Twitter at twitter.com/Ronin Council or just at Ronin Council or whatever they're doing now. I haven't been on Twitter, to be honest, very much.
Well, Instagram's coming out with Thread soon, or Threadless.
Thread, yeah, I mean, shoot, I have a True Social account. That's been collecting dust, Parlor, Vero.
I like Vero.
Yeah, Vero has Zack Snyder. The moment he's not on there anymore or he's not posting anymore, I'm not ever going to use it. So yeah, just keep an eye out for more of the podcast. I've been super busy lately. Moving has been a big part of it. Sam has been very busy. That has also played a role in. I've been trying to wait for him to free up so that way we could do an episode, but he's been very slammed lately. So I think I'm going to have to, do a duo with me and Scott. when I get back. I'm going to Texas. Actually, that could have been Broquette Block, but once I get back from my vacation, I think I'm going to go ahead and do a duo with Scott. So keep an eye out for that wherever you find podcasts. And yeah.
Awesome. Very good. There will be links, of course, to everywhere you can find Millennial Mike in the description of today's episode. And I do want to remind everyone that we are also hosted as a part of Florida Geek Scene. So they, aside from hosting our show, they also have comic book reviews. They have a lot of information for Florida Broquettes, Florida conventions, latest news, reviews, and a lot more. So that's over at floridageekscene.com. And just wanted to give them a shout out because they've hosted our show on their website for several years now. And the owner of the site also owns a local comic book shop. So you know that he is plugged in. I used to know him from my GameStop days even. He used to shop in there and he used to shop at the comic shop I worked at after that. So Scott, a different Scott, is the owner of Florida Geek Scene. And to you on the other side, thank you so much for joining us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Millennial Mike and Broquette Core. All will be well. So if we were able to do a movie night, TV show night, whatever, what's the one anime in your collection that you'd be like, all right, you haven't seen this, I probably haven't. Let's watch this right now in your home theater with your setups, your lights, which reminds me of Kojay's setup when he puts it up on YouTube. Like, that's what I'm imagining on here, like different colors, mooding.
Yeah. I got these lights behind my TV, and
that's cool.
Yeah, so it reflects on the walls. When you're looking at it, you can like see the lights behind there. I still need to buy a few components to make it to where the lights actually change with the picture.
Yeah. How's that work?
I can do it. And I will answer your question about the anime here. Just one second. I would have to hook it up to my computer, cast a screen from my computer to my TV. Long story short, there's a way you can do it without that. You can actually do it, do the lights, whatever DVD you're watching or whatnot, but you have to buy this little box called a Hue Sync box. Long story, but yeah, it's coming along. You have to piecemeal it together to kind of get the full house experience. I've been building this for a few years, so it's expensive. But yeah, as far as what shows, it's hard to say. Well, the fact that you said what show would I pick if you were coming over, that makes it really hard because I have to pick something that I know that you would like. There's a really good one called Bokurano. And I actually told you about this because I was asking to see if you could find the Bokurano manga. You were talking about going to this place where you were looking for manga. And I asked, if you could find that. I have that on Blu-ray. So I'd have to show it to you, but I don't know if you'd like it. It's kind of slow, but we'd have to see.
Yeah, I don't mind slow. From the pictures I'm seeing, I'm like, I guess that kind of looks like Digimon. I see like this big. I see all these little digi-destined kids and a big Digimon looking monster in the background over a city. I'm like, yeah, that's like the Digimon movie.
Yeah, it's a mech. It's a mech anime, slice of life. It's one of those things where you can't say anything about it because you'll spoil it because that's kind of like the theme. It's really good. It's psychological. It's very intense, and a lot of people die.
Bokurano then. Got it.